separate from this, right? Just how people find their way into a weight room and so forth. Um, your story basically was you're anorexic, right?
Yeah, so from about age 13, 14, I had very bad depression. It's reasonably common in both sides of my family anyway. If I'd known that at the time, I would have known what I was in for. But so that in turn led to eating disorders, if you like. So I was anorexic, and I think at the time, I think I was like 51 kilograms, or like what, 112 or something like that in pounds. And my eldest brother Damien had been weight training for a couple of years at that point. So he just came into my room one day after I'd finished school, and his way of reaching out, if you like, was he dumped a big bag of whey protein on my bed and said, "You coming to train with me after school?" And that was it. I didn't have a choice. He was my bigger brother, so you don't say no. So that got me into training, and that was a huge coping mechanism for me. Like I said, at that point, I think I'd already had 2 suicide attempts at that point. Like I said to you yesterday, I got to 6. But I wouldn't be here if he hadn't done that. So I basically owe him and the weight through my life, really. And to this day now, like like you said, like I don't know when I will not train. I can't say that will ever happen, because for me it is therapy, and it is the best and most effective coping mechanism that I've ever found. And I think the positive benefits that it has in that respect cannot be underestimated. It's enormous. Like, I think a lot of people, it doesn't even have to be lifting necessarily, but I think lifting seems to have something about it that, like we were saying, kind of attracts people who maybe have those kind of demons, for want of a better word, in their past. And you end up finding a lot of people who've been in a very similar boat to what you have, or have dealt with their own, and it makes you remember that, okay, you know, you might have gone through some shit, but you're not on your own, and there's like a community of people around you that kind of get it, even if it's not the exact same thing that they've been through. And that alone is a huge benefit for it. You know, it's completely outside of the physical, I find.
So so you go in the gym that first day, right? This transition obviously didn't happen that first day, right? Because you had 4 other attempts after that.
Yeah, absolutely.
But, you know, slowly over this period of time, you know, when younger in the weight room, what are some of the things that like click in your mind that when you think back, you're like, I remember that one, certain training sessions or certain things that maybe somebody said, you know, that brought that confidence, that built your confidence up?
Yeah. I think for the first couple of years, I did learn to enjoy it. But if I wasn't training with my brother, I probably wouldn't be there.
Yeah.
It was still a little bit against my will, inverted commas. Because, you know, when you're in that kind of place, a lot of the time you almost don't want to get better.
Yeah.
You don't want help. You know what I mean? It's like, I deserve this. I deserve to be in this shithole that I'm in, whatever. So at first it was almost forced upon me, but in a very good way. And then I think, which is kind of explains why I'm falling into what I have, really, once I started to help other people with it, that was when it really started to click the most, I would say. So once I had been training long enough to be able to help other people get into it and see the benefits that they got from it, that's when it started to click even more for me, personally. I would say as well, like the first couple of years that we competed, not that I was anywhere near the level that Naomi did, but I had a couple of like junior world records and stuff like that. It was a very cool affirmation that you can achieve things. Not everyone has to have world records and be a world champion, but you can set out and do something that you didn't think was possible and achieve it as long as you put the time and the graft in, which for me as a person at the time with such low self-confidence, to be able to, you know, go to an international competition, walk away with medals, I didn't think I'd ever do shit, you know? So
you already had a degree though at that time, right?
Yeah, but that didn't mean, to say that didn't mean it is wrong, but it didn't give me confidence in myself at the time. Like I'm a perfectionist, so unless I walked away with my degree with a first and 100% and everything, wouldn't have fucking done a thing for me.
Yeah, but at the same time with the training and the competing, you don't have all-time world records.
No, absolutely.
You know, so how come the perfectionist isn't playing its role there?
Oh, it does. But I just think for me, I assumed it was something that I was always going to be terrible at. Like, I'm basically built to be a runner, and I was a very good runner, but the problem was the only reason I did it was because I was good at it. I fucking hated every minute of it, but I persisted with it for quite a long time because it got me positive attention from people for being good at it, which is a really, really shitty reward mechanism, but it did it at the time. And I think it was purely because that I just thought that I was destined to be terrible at it. That once I did anything even remotely good at it, I was like, okay, this is way better than I expected. I think that's why it gave me the confidence. And like I said, I just think there is some intangible about the weight room specifically that gives you confidence. Like getting under a bar, for example, that feels like it's going to kill you, and then you stand up with it. It's just something that you don't get from other sports, I feel. And I think that kind of intangible that I'm describing very badly is why it specifically did it for me, if you like.
Yeah. No, I know. I totally get what you're talking about, right? Is that whole thing. I mean, that's why I do believe that's why a lot of people, drift into the sport.
Yeah.
And two things that you said here is you said, you started to realize it more when you're able to start helping other people, but that came years after.
Yeah.
So what got you though? Let's say, for instance, let's say that was 6 years after.
Yeah.
You've been training. Something, and so you have this area, you have this time here where your brother's kind of forcing you to go in, right? And then there's something that happens that makes you get through that other quadrennial or whatever you want to call it, habit or whatever it's going to be.
Yeah.
What was that drive then? It was just replacing
I think
an addiction?
as a person with an eating disorder at that time, I almost used it to my advantage in that I became so strict with my nutrition and my training because I wanted to change my body the other way, inverted commas, bigorexia type thing.
Yeah.
I think then that almost flipped and became like my driving force to do better at that, as opposed to a driving force to just not be here anymore. And I'm not saying there weren't bad days there in and out, but I would say that basically my depression, my eating disorder then became the driving force behind it. Like you have to get better at this because it became like an obsessive compulsive kind of issue. And, at that time you could probably argue that to a degree it was an unhealthy habit because, I would not go out with friends and eat something that wasn't on my diet plan under any circumstance. I wouldn't eat something that someone else had cooked for me at that point. Because I didn't physically weigh it out and cook it myself, so it really did flip, and it became like that became the all-encompassing part of my mindset then. So I wish I could describe it to you better than that, but it was like I flipped my eating disorder over towards that, and that became the obsession, and eventually it just became a bit more positive over time. Then when I saw that I could make positive changes that were actually benefiting my health rather than taking away from it.
Was it that, or when you started seeing that, the clients that you have you've had clients in the same boat, right?
Yes. So we've dealt with people with all sorts of addictions and things like that. But yeah, I think since I've always been quite open about it, since I started coaching people and being open about the mental aspect of it, like I say, it's amazing how many people will then crawl out of the woodwork and go, me too type thing. Being able to help people with issues like depression and eating disorders through powerlifting has definitely cemented its place in my head as this is where I need to be doing, because I've always wanted to do something related to mental health after being through what I have been through, and I thought I needed to do something specific to do that mental health, but you don't, because when you do this you often end up dealing with a lot of that anyway, and that has almost been my the way I've kind of ended up helping people with their mental health is inadvertently through lifting then. And that, like I said, helping people with things like eating disorder and depression, people who've been where I've been, has been the single most rewarding part of getting into this. And I can't kind of speak highly enough of that on a personal level.
Did that then change you with your relationship with food? So it went from being that opposite obsession to being more balanced?
Yeah, I'm more balanced now. I mean, what has helped is having a naturally higher metabolism and being a bit more muscular now. I had to get used to eating more. Like now I maintain my weight on like 5,000-6,000 calories a day, whereas when I was 15, 16, I would eat every other day if I was lucky. I would allow myself to, and that would be something small, and 50% of the time I'd probably be throwing up a few hours later anyway. So that's been a gradual process that I've had to acclimatize to very slowly. But I think now seeing the positive benefits in other people as well has allowed me to see it more in myself, which maybe I didn't see before. You know what I mean? It's easy to give someone, it's easy to give a client a compliment about what they've achieved, but it's not always easy to turn around and give yourself a compliment about what you've achieved. But I think working with people who've been in similar situations then and reflecting on myself about what I've done makes it a lot easier to go, okay, well, you've not done too bad. You know?
Yeah. So that you yesterday you told a story of one of the powerlifters that you had. So what? Can
So
you share
we've
that?
got a lady on our powerlifting team. She won't mind me talking about this, I'm sure. But she spent a lot of her adult life anorexic. Like I said to you yesterday, she got to the point where she couldn't go around the supermarket with a trolley because she'd get too tired. She'd have to just abandon it and go home. She couldn't walk up flights of stairs and things like that because she'd have to stop and take a breath going up a flight of stairs because she was so malnourished, she was so light. So she competed at British Nationals a couple of weeks back. That's her third competition, I think now. And when she went to go weigh in, she basically just said, I don't give a fuck what I weigh. Doesn't matter. And that is like the biggest fucking victory I will ever get.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I know it sounds selfish because it's her victory, really. But for me, on a personal level, that means so much. Like, she could have gone and fucking bombed, and I would not have given a fuck. Like, for her to turn up with that attitude and just stand on the scale, which I know for her is something that is fucking incredibly daunting and terrifying not too long ago, and just to say, I don't give a fuck what it is, I'm coming here to do a job.
Mm-hmm.
That's a huge win. And that, like I said, you can't praise that highly enough. And you also can't praise like the weight room, if you like, enough for doing that type of thing to people on a regular basis, I'm sure. So yeah, I said that to me just cements what I do and why I do it.
Yeah, I mean, without your journey, she's not doing that.
No, well, she came to me because we actually did, at the commercial gym we were working at, we actually did like a mental health awareness day, and I gave a talk, if you like, for want of a better term, about what I had been through. And that's when she approached me, because she wanted to work with me because of that, because I got it, you know. And at first, yeah, she was still in a bad place with food and things like that, but slowly over time, we've made progress and gotten her eating more and more. But she's also become less regimented, which actually in her scenario is a good thing, you know, because she was over regimented before. And now she's in a very good place, you know, and she's been through some rough times recently, but she's come through it and done extremely well. And she's one of the strongest people mentally that we'll probably ever meet.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say, like, the good thing about her specifically in her lifting is that, like, she will, if you tell her to do something, she will get it done. Like, she could do a set of 5, the first one looks tough, and I'd be like, whoa. But, like, each one would look the same, and she'll still get all 5.
Mm-hmm.
Like, she would never give up on a weight.
Yeah,
she would grind it out.
The first time I think you did a session for her and covered for me, I had to give her a warning. I was like, when you coach her, when she does rep 1 of 5, it looks like she's going to die, but don't worry. She's going to be absolutely fine. And it is literally just pure grit and determination.
Yeah.
It's incredible. But like I said, that can be, you know, when you coach people who've been through that type of thing, that can be the silver lining that people come out with, you know, is that when you've been through something like that, grinding out a set of squats isn't that hard.
Yeah.
You know, relative. You know, when you've
yeah,
been
yeah.
right down at rock bottom, doing a really fucking hard squat or deadlift workout, okay, it's tough at the moment, but it doesn't touch the sides compared to what you've been through, you know. And if anything, it makes you just like, you know, now when people ask me why I train, it's like, well, because I can. It doesn't have to be any more like, I shouldn't be here realistically, but I am. I'm lucky enough to still be here, and I get to go in a weight room and push myself really hard. There's a lot of people out there that don't have that. You know, it might be financial, it might be medical reasons, whatever, but there's a whole lot of fucking people out there who would give a lot to be able to go in a gym like this and be able to do a really hard workout and walk out exhausted, right? But they can't. So this is a gift that we get, and I'm never taking that thing for granted again, quite frankly.
So as an outsider looking in on all this, how do you interpret and see what's going on?
I mean, when we first met, he was in like a really tough place still, and I like saw that pretty much straight away. I think he was really good at like hiding himself from the rest of the world, that he was like fine and there was absolutely nothing wrong, and like he's always kind of shown on the outside with his piercings and tattoos, like he is different.
Yeah.
And I always just encouraged him to be exactly who he wanted to be. Unfortunately, at the time, a lot of the other people around him friends, his family's always been supportive, but specifically like other friends at the time, you know, were telling him not to do things, be a certain way, like people won't like that, that's weird, blah blah blah. But I always just encouraged him to be exactly who he wanted to be, because what's the point otherwise? You know, we're not all meant to be the same, we're all different people. So for him, like, he expresses that on the outside, and I always just encourage that if that made him more confident about himself. Yeah, so I think yeah, like I've always been behind him and supporting him no matter what he wants to do. Yeah, so I think, like, he's obviously benefited from that, I suppose. I hope
Yes.
so.
Oh yeah.
Yes,
No,
I'm here.
just
I'm
saying,
here.
I'm just saying,
I-
have you seen, you know, him change even more so?
Yeah,
you
for
know,
sure,
after
because-
training those other people that are going through the same road.
Absolutely. Like, he's got more of a, I feel like he, in himself, he's almost got more of a purpose now. And for him, that's like validation that he's doing something good. Like, he's getting a lot back from that. So yeah, definitely.
That's probably how I should have summed it up. To
Yeah.
be honest, I
Like,
feel like it has given me a purpose,
Yeah.
which before I didn't have.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely. So yeah, that's probably what I should have said rather than ranting for 10 minutes. So thank you.
his confidence is way better now, especially since he's been presenting and putting himself out there. I feel like I've always been the one trying to convince him that he is good at what he does, because he puts more than 100% of himself into it. He is like a workhorse. Like, he'll work every single hour of the day to be better, but he's the hardest person on himself, being a perfectionist. So I've always been the one telling him, like, you're doing a great job, like, but I feel like he's starting to believe that about himself a bit more now, which is
Just
really
fake
nice
it
to
till
see.
You make it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, it comes with the more people that you can help.
Yes.
exactly.
Right. The bigger you reach, the more people you can help.
Absolutely.
You know,
Yeah.
the more you're going to feel like you have that purpose.
Yeah.
You know, the more you can live.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think now, like doing the seminars with Christian Thibodeau, things like that, it's very cool to go and do, because my initial thought is always like, why the hell do people want to hear what I got to say, you know? But then the feedback you get afterwards, you know, it could be weeks later or whatever, but when you get feedback, and you know, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about here, where you know, people reach out weeks later and go, yeah, what you went through, X, Y, and Z, I've been using that, and that's been a game changer. Thank you. It's like, again, it cements that purpose. You know, I know it's a bit of a different thing, but to know that I can go out there and help people do what I do to a better degree, again, just lets me know all again that I'm doing the right thing with my life, and it makes me feel better about being here. I feel like.